in repose in the Senate chamber this afternoon. That's set to begin at about 2 p.m. Eastern. Also, very quickly, Congressman John Dingell of Michigan is setting a new standard in the Congress with 57 years, 5 months, and 26 days of House service. That is a remarkable tenure. That spans more than a quarter of existence of Congress, and that record is set to take place tomorrow in the House. Congressman Dingell, former Democratic powerhouse who asserted jurisdiction over vast expanses of federal policy as the intimidating chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, he will become the longest-serving member of Congress in history with his 20,977th day as a representative. He would surpass the record held by Senate Democrat of West Virginia, Robert Byrd.
Ayes are 245 and the nays are 182. The have it. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Washington seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer, be removed as co-sponsor from H.R. 1249.
Without objection, so ordered. Does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to speak out of order for 1 minute for the purpose of inquiring of the Majority Leader the schedule for the week to come.
Without objection, so ordered.
I thank the Speaker. Before yielding to my friend for the schedule, however, I would like to join, I know, with all of our colleagues in wishing him a happy birthday. It is the Majority Leader's birthday today. And because I don't want him to retaliate, I'm not going to mention which birthday it is. But I want to congratulate him and wish him the very best, and we'll have a birthday colloquy today. But I thank him for his leadership and yield to him the time to explain our schedule for the week to come.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentleman, my friend from Maryland, for those kind birthday wishes. And yes, it is my 50th birthday, and I've been saying all day it's you know, my wife Diana and I are empty nesters now, so it's about time I'm 50. So, but I do thank the gentleman, and Mr. Speaker would tell the gentleman I'll be glad to take him up on a kinder and gentler colloquy for the birthday. But I thank the gentleman. Mr. Speaker, on Monday the House will meet in pro forma session at 3 p.m. and no votes are expected. On Tuesday the House will meet at noon for morning hour, 2 p.m. for legislative business. Votes will be postponed until 6:30 p.m. On Wednesday and Thursday the House will meet at 10 a.m. for morning hour and noon for legislative business. On Friday, the House will meet at 9 a.m. for legislative business. Last votes of the week are expected no later than 3 p.m. Mr. Speaker, the House will consider a few bills under suspension of the rules, a complete list of which will be announced by the close of business tomorrow. In addition, the House will consider H.R. 1910, the National Defense Authorization Act. Chairman Buck McKeon and his committee once again will bring a bipartisan bill to the floor to ensure that our men and women in the armed services have the tools and resources necessary to protect the freedoms that all of us enjoy here at home. Again, Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentleman and yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his comments. We have started the appropriations process. We did two bills this week. They were relatively bipartisan in nature. I regret, of course, that the adoption of the King Amendment, which we thought was a very bad policy, precluded us from voting for a bill that we otherwise would have voted for, that we failed to reach a bipartisan agreement. I think there were some on your side who did not want the King Amendment offered, which precludes any discretion for prosecutors, which I think is bad as general policy and certainly bad as it relates to the Dreamers. But I would hope that as we move forward on the appropriation bills that we would be able to do those as we did the military construction and veterans bill, which was passed almost with overwhelming vote on both sides of the aisle. One of the problems, Mr. Leader, is going to be the amount of dollars that have been made available to the 9 remaining bills, perhaps agriculture, so the 8 remaining bills after we do MILCON, Homeland Security, which essentially were done at the agreed upon levels of the Budget Control Act, similar to what the Senate is marking their bills to. I'm not sure what the defense number is going to be, but our fear is and concern is that these bills will be marked so that substantial dollars that would otherwise been available to other subcommittees will not be available because, in effect, we've front-loaded spending on the first 3 bills. The Ryan budget, as the gentleman knows, is almost $100 billion less than the agreement of August of 2011 on how much dollars would be available for priorities on the discretionary side of our budget. Can the gentleman give me any information with reference to whether or not we may still be going to a budget conference where we perhaps could reach a elimination of the sequester and a new number for the that could be agreed upon between the Senate and the House, as we always have to do, whether there's a budget or not. You have to agree on the numbers, and we're about $100 billion apart. That has to be breached, not breached, but overcome if we're going to pass bills. Can the gentleman give me any thoughts on whether or not we're going to go to conference? There's nothing on the schedule on a motion to go to conference or appointment of conferees, and I yield to my friend.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentleman. I understand his concerns. I think all of us have concerns about the way spending reductions are implemented under sequester. As the gentleman knows, we in the majority have continued to try and advocate. We put proposals forward to accomplish the spending reductions and reforms in a smarter way. I think both of us, Mr. Speaker, would agree there are much smarter ways for that to happen. Unfortunately, it is the law, and unless we're able to agree, and in fact, again, the House has posited its formula for better reductions in spending. The White House, Senate refused to go along. So sequester is the law. As the gentleman knows, 302Bs are set according to the post-sequester numbers. And that is our intention, Mr. Speaker, to abide by the law with the sequester in place. I would respond to the gentleman's inquiry about budget conference, and the gentleman knows, as I've said before, Chairman Ryan stands ready to work with Senator Murray on drawing an outline and structure for the way a conference would proceed. But unfortunately, there can be even no discussion on that point because there is an insistence on the part of the Senate and the White House that any budget conference report any budget conference discussion include discussion of tax increases. We have said repeatedly we can't be raising taxes every other month, every 6 months in this town, that there was a significant increase in taxes, impact on working Americans this year because of the fiscal cliff, and we remain committed to addressing the problems of the budget, but will not do so while there is an insistence that a prerequisite is raising taxes. I yield back.
So in other words, I take the gentleman saying there's not going to be a conference because there's disagreement on what the result of that conference will be. Is that what I hear you saying?
Mr. Speaker, I'd respond to the gentleman. We would like to have agreement that we can begin discussions of a fiscally sane path to balancing our budget. As the gentleman knows, Mr. Speaker, our conference has made its stand saying we want to balance the budget. We want to promote spending reductions and reforms that get us there in 10 years. And in that vein, we would like to see that it's not punishing the American taxpayer the way that we get there as far as the budgeteers are concerned here in Washington. It's for growing our economy. It's for reforming the kinds of things that are necessary to take care of those unfunded liabilities at the federal level. So I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I would say that we have indicated on a number of occasions we'd love to see some growing the economy legislation on the floor, jobs bills on the floor, bills that the administration and Republicans and economists on both sides could say would grow the economy. We haven't seen those, and we're concerned about that. Does the gentleman believe, first of all, let me make the observation that we don't believe the first three bills that you're bringing out, you've brought out two, the defense bills, are being brought out at the Ryan budget levels. In fact, they're being brought out substantially above the Ryan budget levels if, in fact, you perceived equal distribution under 302B of the allocations of discretionary money. So we don't share your view on that the two bills we voted on, frankly, have been at the Senate level, essentially, and which is why they were relatively bipartisan, because not only was it the Senate level, but it was at the level that we agreed to in 2011, in August of 2011, would in fact be the discretionary number for fiscal year 14. Let me ask you something. There's not anything on the schedule with reference to the debt limit. As the gentleman knows, the debt limit was extended until May 19th. That is now 3 weeks past, and we have not dealt with the debt limit. Can the gentleman tell me whether there's any plan to deal with the debt limit extension, which the gentleman and I agree must be done if we're not going to destabilize the economy and grow the economy? I yield to my friend.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentleman, and to his first point about jobs bills, Mr. Speaker, we have remained committed in the House as the majority to doing all we can to help every American in terms of a brighter future, and that is a path to a better job, better career. We brought forward the Skills Act, something that is a bipartisan commitment and should have been a lot more so on this floor in trying to streamline workforce training programs to help those that are unemployed. You know, we want to help the unemployed get into a job. The federal workforce training program is a mess. There's 50 programs. Very difficult for unemployed people to get the training and skills they need to get a job. And unfortunately, that wasn't met with a lot of bipartisan reception. Secondly, we just voted on the Keystone XL pipeline bill, a known proposal to create tens of thousands of jobs, much less contribute to America's energy security and independence, as well as competitiveness, which means more jobs, more capital flowing into America. We also passed, without any bipartisan support, the Working Families Flexibility Act, looking to those struggling moms and dads who are working. The fact that 50% of our workforce comes from dual-income households, many of them with kids. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The gentleman's correct. The House is not in order. Members, please remove your conversations from the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Working Families Flexibility Act. It addressed the very struggles that working families have in trying to make their life work. We couldn't get bipartisan support on that. And then I would say to the gentleman, we remain committed to making the future brighter through offering more opportunity to all people. Our solutions that come from conservatives in the House majority, we believe our solutions can work for everyone. The gentleman knows he and I have met on his Making America agenda. There are things that we have in common, but unfortunately we can't see a way to having bipartisan votes. So I remain committed to working with the gentleman on his agenda, and I know the spirit in which he approaches his obligations to his constituents and his caucus, and know that we hopefully can get back on track towards that end. Now, towards the question, secondly, about budget levels and writing the bills, I would say to the gentleman that we have drafted the appropriations bills, marked them up, along with his caucus, and would say that they reflect our priorities. And obviously, our priorities are going to differ from the members on his side. The trick is to try and see where we can work towards a commonality. And lastly, to the debt limit, yes, we remain very concerned about that. Hopefully, we can all work together and come up with a way that we can adopt a plan that will manage down the debt and deficit and allow us to reach a balance in the federal level within 10 years, enacting the necessary reforms to the programs that we know are disproportionately causing the deficit without disproportionately continuing to hit the discretionary side when we know the mandatory side provides most of the impetus for growth. Now yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his comments. I would say that he mentioned two bills that, with reference to jobs, the Skills Act. Unfortunately, the Skills Act suffered from the same thing the Homeland Security Act just today suffered from, as the gentleman knows. Contrary to what we could have done on a bipartisan basis in the Skills Act, diversity, a small number was inserted into that bill, reducing diversity visas to this country, which was highly offensive to many of Americans who saw that as a direct attack on their ability to get family members to come to this country, particularly from Africa and the Caribbean. And it was well known on your side that if that was put in, it was going to undermine our ability to have a bipartisan agreement. And the same occurred to the Homeland Security. The gentleman knew full well that the inclusion of the King Amendment, which we felt was a very negative amendment and put dreamers in particular at risk, but whether or not that was the case undermines very, very substantially excuse me, I was incorrect. Staff corrects me. It was the STEMS bill that I was talking about. You did not mention that bill. But the point is the same, that in moving ahead on a bipartisan fashion, the committee did come out with a bipartisan bill on Homeland Security. You're absolutely correct. And Mr. Price, the chairman, was prepared to vote for that. And he was going to urge the caucus to vote for it. And we were going to vote for it until, with very few exceptions, your caucus, your side of the aisle voted overwhelmingly to put in a piece of an amendment which you knew would undermine the bipartisanship that had been arrived at by the committee. And that's unfortunate. The gentleman, ironically, from our perspective, I tell my friend with great respect, we think the Family Flexibility Act was the Family Income Reduction Act. We think what it said to an awful lot of working people, you're not going to get paid overtime. If your colleague will work for free and get comp time at some point in time that the employer decides, we're not going to pay overtime. So you're right. We respectfully disagree. We, as I said, think that was the Family Income Reduction Act. Families are already struggling. Middle-income families' income have been stuck in the mud, and we think that exacerbated it further. And very frankly, as the gentleman knows, that was a bill that was offered some years ago with very substantial opposition and didn't become law, as this one's not going to become law. But in any event, let me close with this question. There are 3 bills which are being marked up. Maybe Ag was marked up or is going to be marked up soon. Does the gentleman expect that all 12 appropriation bills will be brought to the floor? He talks about priorities. Our priorities are different, although ironically the gentleman has expressed in his memos and in his agenda that he's announced a desire to focus research on biomedical research to keep Americans healthier, children and others. Ironically, the 302B that he talked about earlier suggests over, to be exact, 26.5% cut in the bill that funds NIH. And that's going to result in a very substantial reduction in basic biomedical research at NIH. And the leaders of NIH have made that very clear, that not only that bill, but this present sequester is undermining their ability to conduct biomedical research. And I know the gentleman feels strongly about that, as I do. And let me ask him, do you think that bill is going to be brought to the floor? It was not brought to even the full committee last year, much less to the floor last year. And therefore, no one had the opportunity to have a vote on those priorities. Can the gentleman tell me whether he thinks those 9 remaining bills will be brought to the floor? Yes, my friend.
Thank the gentleman, Mr. Speaker. First of all, it is our intent to continue to work through the appropriations process and bring all the bills to the floor. That is correct. I would say furthermore to the gentleman, as far as the impact of the sequester and 302Bs on a specific bill versus a piece of that bill, meaning the NIH research piece, as the gentleman knows, legislating, especially in times of fiscal stress, is about prioritizing. And the gentleman correctly states that I'm very much in favor of making a priority out of federal research and development, and am convinced that basic research is needed to allow us to continue to advance the breakthroughs in science that not only help heal people and cure disease, but ultimately can help us bring down health care costs, which is the #1 issue that's aggravating our deficit. So I'm glad to hear the gentleman shares that priority. I know he does. But it doesn't mean necessarily that because we are going to commit ourselves to balancing this budget, that we cannot share that priority. And I hope the gentleman can share with us the import of that priority and support what it is we're trying to do in the area of research, making sure that we can reduce other less priorities in spending. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and I will look forward to seeing the labor health bill on the floor and seeing how he comes to those priorities, because I think it's very important. Now, before I close, and I think he's left the floor, but I do want to mention today is the day on which John Dingell of Michigan becomes the longest-serving member of Congress in the history of the Congress since 1789. He is one of the great legislators with whom many of us have served, and I know that next week we will be making we will be having an opportunity on the floor to have all members, or many of the members, participate in recognizing his service. My staff tells me maybe we're going to do it tomorrow, not next week, but most members will be here next week, and I expect they'll be saying something at that time as well. I know the Majority Leader joins me in congratulating our colleague and our friend John Dingell on his extraordinary service to not only the Congress of the United States, but to the American people. And Mr. Speaker, unless the Majority Leader wants to say something further,
I would just join the gentleman, Mr. Speaker, in congratulating Mr. Dingell for an incredible, first of all, landmark, milestone, and I know he will continue in that service to the people of the great state of Michigan. Yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet at 3 p.m. on Monday, June 10, 2013.
Without objection, so ordered.
Okay. Thank you.
Purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
I just need 1 minute, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that my name be removed as a co-sponsor of HJ Resolution 43. My name was incorrectly added to the bill.
Without objection, so ordered. The chair is prepared to entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. And for what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak about a bill that's going to be on the House floor here in a couple weeks that should be certainly of interest to every man, woman, and child in this country, because we all shake hands with a farmer at least 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And also it's relevant to my home state, the Keystone State of Pennsylvania, as agriculture is the #1 industry in Pennsylvania. Some folks will be surprised to hear that. But the fact is, we'll have the Farm Bill before us. I'm proud to be a member of the Agriculture Committee. We have worked long and hard on this Farm Bill. We've made some great improvements. We've eliminated many of the subsidies that have kind of clouded the Farm Bill, in my opinion, for decades. And we've moved towards a more free market risk management approach, protecting our farmers, providing them some access to crop insurance and a dairy margin insurance to protect against the weather. Agriculture is probably one of the most vulnerable industries when it comes to all extremes of weather. The Farm Bill also, I'm proud to say, assures that every man, woman, and child in this country will have access to nutrition. Every income-eligible man, woman, and child, because it also, the House version, ensures some reforms to stop the fraud and abuse that has run rampant with the Farm Bill. So I encourage my colleagues to support the Farm Bill when it comes to the floor in the weeks ahead, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to have the passage 1 minute.
With,
revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to join many of my colleagues who came to the floor yesterday to recognize that this coming Monday, June 10th, is the 50th anniversary of the Equal Pay Act being signed into law. With that said, even after 50 years, we're still waging the same battle for women. The historic anniversary is a reminder that there's much work to be done to close the wage gap. Equal pay for equal work is about fairness for women and families and dollars and common sense. For working mothers who have to put food on the table and the retired women whose income is tied to their former salary, the wage gap means real dollars. In South Florida, if the wage gap were eliminated, a working woman would have enough money for 51 more weeks of food, 3 months of mortgage and utility payments, or 5 months of rent, or more than 1,600 additional gallons of gas. And Mr. Speaker, whether you serve customers in a local retail store or argue cases before the highest court, you have a right to be treated with fairness and dignity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the seas were high and seasickness was rampant. The sky was gloomy and dark, and the rain was blinding hard. The sun was hidden from the beaches below as 63,000 GIs with thousands of our allies stormed landing sites called Utah, Omaha, Gold, and Juneau. The average age of the American soldier was 20. 2,500 of them died on the first day. It was June 6, 1944. It was D-Day in World War II. It was a noble cause, free Europe from the Nazis. But today, the boot prints, the red crimson beaches of blood of the U.S. soldier are gone. The sea is calm, peaceful, as if it never happened. But at the top of the cliffs of Normandy, France, 9,387 white glistening crosses and stars of David of the American fallen shine as an eternal memory that here on this spot, the Americans fought and gave all. They came, they died, they liberated. We remember they were soldiers once, for the worst casualty of war is to be forgotten. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of young dreamers, young people brought as children without proper documentation to this country, young people willing to work hard to share in the American dream, young people who have so much to offer America. Today, 220 House Republicans said no to their dream by voting to terminate the program that allows them to stay legally. These Republicans, by their votes, said no to an essential element of comprehensive immigration reform at the very time the Senate is about to take up that measure. To those Republicans who say, no, we can't, we need more and more Americans who insist, yes, we can. When we harness the energy of these youth, when we reform our immigration laws in a comprehensive way, we will create an America as good as their dream. I yield back.
The gentleman yields his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Well, Mr. Speaker, on Sunday, many families across Minnesota and across the country took the time to recognize National Cancer Survivor Day. Last year, more than 28,000 Minnesotans were diagnosed with cancer, and while there's hardly anyone who doesn't know a loved one or a friend who has suffered from cancer, the good news is that 13.7 million Americans have won their battle against this terrible disease. One great Twin Cities organization working to ensure that those struggling with cancer do not face it alone is the new Gilda's Club that opened up in Minnetonka, Minnesota recently. And the American Cancer Society is now setting aggressive goals for the reduction of cancer. Prevention and early detection are key to reaching these goals. Thanks to advances in medical innovation, it's estimated that over the next 10 years, millions more Americans will have a chance at life after cancer. Mr. Speaker, let's celebrate with those that have won their fight as they offer hope that all cancer patients may someday be able to proudly say that they, too, are cancer survivors. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields his time. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Some years ago, many of us heard of a tsunami. As we approach this weekend of congratulations for our wonderful graduates, we should, in fact, tell them this is the best and the greatest time of their life. But it is important for members of Congress to recognize that we have a task of graduating to do. We must graduate past sequestration and eliminate it, for it is a tsunami against our young people. We have to, in fact, graduate past this horrific pending devastation of an increase in the student loan interest rates, where it'll go from 3.4% to 6.8%. That's a tsunami against our young people, our brightest. And then we must turn back the clock on an amendment that says that those who came as youngsters through no fault of their own, who are now graduating in places around America, high schools and colleges, yes, immigrant children who are undocumented, who want to give back to this nation, pay their taxes, work, get a work certificate, and give back to those who no longer can work. A tsunami has just come against them. We have to end this, stand for our children. Congratulations, 2013 graduates. As I go home to their graduation, I want to give them a gift that America really stands for them. I yield back.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the scandals embroiling the White House are the result of a culture of contempt for the law that we have seen since the beginning of the Obama administration. Over the past 4 years, President Obama has demonstrated a dedication to ideology and politics to the exclusion of the rule of law and effectively working to get this economy booming again. Because of this administration's agenda-driven, big government policies, it is now more difficult for companies in western Pennsylvania to grow and hire additional staff. Obamacare is raising costs, has discouraged hiring, and threatens access to quality health care. Regulations strangling the financial sector are limiting opportunities for small businesses to add jobs. And just last week, we learned that 134 hardworking employees of a coal company in western Pennsylvania were laid off. They can thank President Obama and his war on coal for altering the market for one of America's most valuable and abundant resources. President Obama and his administration need to stop their failed big government policies, and instead we need to do all we can to get jobs back for the American people and around the nation. I thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, request to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I recently met up with some future leaders of the district I represent who are members of the Flower Bluff High School Navy Junior ROTC. They won first place this year at the Texas State NJROTC competition and went on to win all-service Grand National Champion in Daytona, Florida. That's right, national champions. Before they won nationals, I went to their school to congratulate them on their regional win. And you know what? I wished them good luck on their upcoming national competition, and sure enough, their skill panned out, and they won. They said the other teams were really strong, but once again, they won a national championship. This outstanding group of young men and women, led by Commander Armando Solis, who started the NJROTC unit at Flower Bluff High School in 1993, a group of winners. At nationals, aside from the Grand National Championship, they won first place in armed duel, demilitarized, armed commander, demilitarized inspection, and second place in unarmed guard. Congratulations to the young men and women of the NJROTC at Flower Bluff High School. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kansas seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognize two of America's finest heroes. I was saddened to learn of the death of 23-year-old Second Lieutenant Justin Sisson. Second Lieutenant Sisson graduated from Blue Valley West High School in Overland Park, Kansas, a suburb of the 3rd District, which I represent. Sisson was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 506th Infantry Regiment, 4th Brigade Combat Team, 101st Airborne Division, as an Assistant Operations Officer out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Deployed to Afghanistan with less than a year of active duty, Sisson, along with Army Specialist Robert Allen Pierce of Panama, Oklahoma, were killed on Monday by a suicide vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. With the deaths of Second Lieutenant Justin Sisson and Specialist Robert Pierce, we are once again reminded that freedom is not free. As Americans, we owe a debt of gratitude to these brave men that we simply cannot repay. Mr. Speaker, Second Lieutenant Sisson and Specialist Pierce will forever be known as patriots and heroes whose sacrifice will never be forgotten. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair lays before the House the following personal request.
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Thompson of California for today.
Without objection, the request is granted.
You have anything else? You read the first paragraph.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2013, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Smith, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are Kermit Gosnells all over America today inflicting not only violence, cruelty, and death on very young children, but excruciating pain as well. Many Americans, including some who self-identify as pro-choice, were shocked and dismayed by the Gosnell expose and trial. Perhaps a decades-long culture of denial and deceptive marketing has made it difficult to see and understand a disturbing reality. Even after 40 years of abortion on demand and over 55 million dead babies and millions of wounded mothers, many until Gosnell somehow construed abortion as victimless. That has changed. There are two victims, Mr. Speaker, in every abortion, the mother and her unborn child, 3 if twins are involved. The brutality of severing the spines of defenseless babies, euphemistically called snipping by Dr. Gosnell, has finally peeled away the benign facade of the billion-dollar abortion industry. Like Gosnell, abortionists all over America decapitate, dismember, and chemically poison babies to death each and every year. That's what they do. Americans are connecting the dots and asking whether what Gosnell did is really any different than what all the other abortionists do. And the answer is no, it's not different. A D&E abortion, which is described here, a common method after 14 months, is a gruesome, pain-filled act of violence that literally rips and tears to pieces the body parts of a child. And that's what they call choice. That is what they call safe and legal abortion. Mr. Speaker, the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, authored by Congressman Trent Franks and co-sponsored by several congresswomen and men, including me, is a modest but absolutely necessary attempt to at least protect some babies, that is to say those who are 20 weeks old and pain-capable, from having to suffer and die a painful death from abortion. On May 23rd, Chairman Trent Franks convened a hearing in the Judiciary Committee's Constitution and Civil Justice Subcommittee on his legislation. The bill, H.R. 1797, it's entitled the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, was approved by the subcommittee on June 4th and now moves to the full committee and hopefully soon to the full House. The testimony of several witnesses, Mr. Speaker, I would respectfully submit is a must-read for anyone who cares about human rights, for anyone who cares about women and children. One witness, Dr. Anthony Leventano, a former abortionist who testified that he performed approximately 1,200 abortions. Over 100 of them were second trimester abortions like this D&E procedure that is described here in this graph. He said, and I quote him, "Imagine if you can, you are a pro-choice obstetrician gynecologist like I once was. Your patient today is 24 weeks pregnant. If you could see her baby, which is quite easy on an ultrasound, she would be as long as your hand, plus half from the top of your head, her head, to the bottom of her rump, not counting the legs. Your patient has been feeling her baby kick for at least a month or more, but now she is asleep on an operating table." He continued, "With suction of the amniotic fluid, after that is completed, you look for what he called a Soffer clamp. This instrument is about 13 inches long and made of stainless steel. At the business end are located jaws about 2.5 inches long and about 3/4 of an inch thick, and these is what he is talking about right here. This instrument is for grasping and crushing tissue. When it gets hold of something, it does not let go. A second trimester D&E abortion is a blind procedure. Picture yourself. The baby can be in any orientation," he goes on, "or position inside the uterus. Picture yourself reaching in with the Soffer clamp and grasping anything that you can. At 24 weeks gestation, the uterus is thin and soft, so be careful not to perforate or puncture the walls. Once you've grasped something in size," this doctor, former abortionist, goes on to say, "squeeze on the clamp to set the jaws and pull hard. Pull really hard. You feel something let go, and out pops a fully formed leg about 6 inches long. Reach in again and grasp whatever you can. Set the jaw and pull really hard once again, and out pops an arm about the same length. Reach in again and again, and that clamp and tear out the spine, the intestines, the heart, and the lungs." The doctor goes on to say that the toughest part of a D&E abortion is extracting the baby's head. The head of a baby that age is about the size of a large plum and is now free-floating inside of the uterine cavity. You can be pretty sure you have hold of it if the Soffer clamp is spread as far as your fingers will allow. You will know you have it right when you crush down on the clamp and you see a white gelatinous material coming through the cervix. That is the baby's brains, this abortionist goes on to say. You can then extract the skull pieces. Many times, he went on in his testimony before Trent Frank's subcommittee, many times a little face will come out and stare back at you. Congratulations, you have just successfully performed a second trimester D&E abortion. You just affirmed the right to choose. If you refuse to believe that this procedure inflicts severe pain on that unborn child, please think again. It does. Another witness, Mr. Speaker, Ms. Jill Stanek, a registered nurse, spoke of appalling stories of abortion survivors and the pain, the excruciating pain that they suffer when they are being aborted. She pointed out that when she testified before the committee back in 2001, it was to tell of her experience as a registered nurse in the labor and delivery department at Christ Hospital in Oak Lawn, Illinois, where she discovered babies were being aborted alive and put on a shelf to die in the department's soiled utility closet. Indeed, this nurse went on to say at the hearing, "I was traumatized and changed forever by my experience of holding a little abortion survivor for 45 minutes until he died, a 21 to 22-week-old baby who had been aborted because he had Down syndrome." Since then, other appalling stories of abortion survivors either being abandoned or killed have trickled out. In 2005, a mother delivered a 23-week-old baby in the toilet at an EPOC clinic in Orlando, Florida, and was shocked to see this little guy move. Abortion staff not only refused to help, but turned away paramedics who her friend had notified by calling 911. Angelie, the woman, could do no more than helplessly sit on the floor rocking and singing to her baby for 11 minutes until that infant died. In 2006, Gloria Williams delivered her 23-week-old baby boy on a recliner at a GYN diagnostic center in Hialeah, Florida. When he began breathing and moving, abortion clinic owner Belkis Gonzalez cut the umbilical cord and zipped him into a biohazard bag, still alive. The Kermit Gosnell case provides further evidence that the lines between infanticide and legal feticide, both via abortion, have become blurred. This abortionist was convicted only last week, that's what she was talking when she testified, of 3 counts of first-degree murder. And also last week, as she went on to say, came yet another revelation and photos from 3 former employees who allege that abortionist Douglas Carpin in Houston, Texas, routinely kills babies after they are born by puncturing the soft spot at the top of the head or impaling the stomach with a sharp instrument, twisting off the head, or puncturing the throat with his finger. Mr. Speaker, if that's not child abuse in its most extreme form, I don't know what is. It is easy to be horrified, she went on in her testimony to say, this nurse, by heart-wrenching stories such as these, and to imagine the torture abortion survivors endure as they're being killed. But it is somehow not so easy for some to envision preborn babies the same age being tortured as they are killed by similar methods. Today, premature babies are routinely given pain relief, who are born at the same age as babies who are torn limb from limb or injected in the heart during abortions. Even the World Health Organization goes so far as to recommend analgesia for preemies, getting simple heel pricks for a couple of drops of blood. Likewise, prenatal surgery is becoming commonplace, and along with it, anesthesia for babies being operated on even in the middle of pregnancy. Meanwhile, babies of identical age are being torn apart, like this D&E abortion, with no pain relief whatsoever. And again, they suffer, and they suffer horribly. It must be that some people inexplicably think that the uterus provides a firewall against fetal pain, or that babies marked for abortion are somehow numb, while their wanted counterparts aren't. They're not numb. They feel every single bit of killing as whether it's the clamp, the Soffer clamp, or any other instrument is being used to dismember or to decapitate. She concludes by saying this thinking is better suited for the Middle Ages than for modern medicine. Mr. Speaker, today there is ample documentation that unborn children experience serious pain from at least the 20th week, and most likely even before that. When it comes to pain, all of us go through great lengths to mitigate its severity and its duration. None of us want to ever die a painful death. Unborn children deserve no less. I yield to the prime sponsor of this very important legislation, Trent Franks, the chairman of the committee, and like I said, the author of the bill.
Well, I thank the gentleman, and Mr. Speaker, I don't often do this, but I'm going to step away from my prepared remarks just for a moment and express a sincere gratitude to Congressman Chris Smith. Mr. Speaker, years ago when I came to Washington the very first time, it was on a weekend, and I couldn't come here and visit the Congress, but I came to the congressional halls of where their offices were. And there were 2 offices that I visited. One was the late